Holly Rustick here with Grant Writing and Funding, and welcome to the Grant Writing and Funding channel. We're going to talk about where to find state grants and contracts today and a little bit about what they are. So I have some tricks for you today. So our first trick is to really understand where does state and contract money actually come from. And it's important to know this because of auditing things, but we're not going to get into all of that today. That can be another episode. But what I really want to talk about is where does that money come from? Well, part of the money from state grants and contracts comes from the federal government. Now, I am talking U.S. federal grants here and state grants today. The federal government awards states a certain allocation of monies that then they can award within their state to different nonprofits and organizations to actually direct some of the priorities of the federal and state government. You may have heard of the child development block grants, those sort of things, Medicaid, other types of federal pass-through monies that go to the states. Other portions of state grants and contracts also are derived from state taxes and other types of allocations within the state. So when you get a contract or a grant from a state, you do want to see, is there any federal pass-through monies that are part of the monies that are funding the program? That is something good to know. So let's talk the difference between grants and contracts. So grants are when monies are awarded to your organization in hopes that they will be spent on what you're saying you're going to spend them on for that certain priority. You've written an application, you said you're going to spend it a certain way. They hope that you spend it that way. There will be receipts, there will be asked for, there will be certain program reports asked for. There's going to be a lot of documentation that the funder wants to see that you actually spent the money on what you said you're going to spend it on, and you deliver the program you said you were going to deliver. Now, on the other hand, a contract is actually a legally binding document, and that contract is really important because it's going to state all of the scope of work that your program will deliver. If you don't spend the grant appropriately, will you have to pay a grant back? Possibly. If you don't spend a contract appropriately, will you have to pay that contract back? Yes, and you may be taken to jail if you don't spend it appropriately. So do spend it appropriately. But do go after both grants and contracts. Don't let the legally binding thing scare you off from going after contracts, as contracts can be a little bit easier to manage sometimes because sometimes they don't have as much reporting involved. They just want to know, did you meet the criteria you said? You can draw down the funds if you did. So with grants, there might be a lot of receipts, a lot more reports, there's a lot more paperwork involved most of the time. Now, there are always exceptions, but do go after either grants or contracts. These are just different funding instruments that your organization can apply to if you're eligible. Now, where are you going to find these state grants and contracts? Now that we know what they are, now we know the different funding instruments they come in, where do we find these? Well, one place, of course, is the state and city agency websites. Yes, go to your state agency websites. Those are your local Department of Labor's, your local Department of Education, and so much more. Now, the thing is that every single city and state website can look wildly different. So it will take some time to kind of go through these, but if you are able to sign up for a newsletter list, do that. Now, all agencies don't have this, but you can definitely go to their websites and you can look. Now, some keywords you want to look for, because of course they don't all use the same language, is RFP, which stands for Request for Proposal, announcement, news, and of course grants. Those types of keywords you do want to look down in their drop-down menus so you know where they actually post their announcements for grants and contracts. Another place that you can look is in your local newspaper. Now, this is really important because a lot of agencies in their procurement, they have to actually publish the announcement somewhere. So one of the places a lot of city and state government agencies actually still publish is through a newspaper. So this is definitely something that you do want to check out or subscribe to your local newspaper. And of course, another place that you can find state grant and contract announcements is by following the state or city agency's social media feeds. Now, some are more active than others, some are not active at all. Those that are really active will also publish on their social media because it's another place where they can say that they've published and hit their procurement requirements. So that's a really good place, and that can just show up in your feed and you can follow along and see also, a lot of times also show who was awarded grants, so you can kind of see who they're funding and so so forth. So do follow them on social media, the ones that of course make sense for your organization. And lastly, another place where you can find the announcements, grants, and contracts is to reach out to the point of contact at that specific state or city agency where you think you're going to tap into the most funding. You run a youth program, you want to be tapping into Department of Education. You might want to be tapping into your local Department of Health and Human Services, those types of agencies wherever your fit is. So do reach out to them. Ask them if they do have an email list that you can sign up for, maybe a newsletter where they publish their announcements, or if they can just keep you in the loop when they have something coming out. Or they might even just tell you over the phone, hey, yeah, actually we do have something coming up in a month or so. So this is what it is, da 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 da. So those are the different places. Once again, go to the state and city agency websites and use some of the keywords like RFP, grant, announcement, news to try to find the announcements. Also, look at your newspapers, right? So do pay attention to what's being published in your newspapers. And of course, follow them on social media. If they're active on social media, you do want to be a follower and stay up to their feed and see what kind of announcements are coming out. And finally, contact the agency. Say, hey, who organizes your grants? Who oversees that? Can I get on the email list? Can I talk to them? Can I be a part of this? Can I be a part of this network so I can find out about the grant and contract announcements? And just to sum up today, why is this so important? Why are state grants and contracts so important? Your organization can really benefit from state grants and contracts, right? A lot of times we spend a lot of time focusing on federal grants or foundation grants. And do go over to our episode here if you want to know more about finding federal grants. But a lot of times the state grants and contracts is kind of overlooked because we're looking at big picture and then we're looking at separate, non-government. But there are a lot of monies, as we could see, federal pass-through, your state has taxes and different allocations to award grants. So there's a lot of money here and there's a lot of recurring grants that go out. They really get to know your organization. They want to continue supporting you. Another benefit is that state agencies and city agencies within your state are very passionate, of course, about funding local organizations within the state. If your organization operates programs within your state, within that city, you have a higher propensity, of course, of getting grants, and you're highly eligible then for getting grants as long as you meet the priority. So you're not competing on a federal level with federal grants, you're competing in your state or your city for grants, so that actually reduces the competition quite a bit. So do apply, look for state grants and contracts. Make these a part of your grant research for your overall funding plan. If you like this video and you want to hear more about grant writing and funding, all different types of things, strategic planning, grant writing, how to start a freelance grant writing business maybe, do subscribe and also sign up to our grant writing and funding hub haven where I'll send you you get an online portal right away to get all kinds of freebies and you get enrolled to our weekly newsletter. All right, I'll see you next time.